Men, I want to welcome you to another edition of the Lost Manhood podcast. In this episode, I have some things that I want to read to you, some information based on some research that I've spent for the last month when it comes to the issue of masculinity and manhood. But I want to begin at least quoting something from 2013 out of my notes from the Mandate Men's Conference we hosted here again in 2013. And at that time, I quoted this particular scripture verse out of Exodus chapter 1, verse 22. And I really reiterated there that there's a battle raging to destroy men. And that the Bible vividly depicts this satanic agenda to annihilate men. In fact, it begins in the garden. For instance, the attack really was on Adam, not so much on Eve, but we see this throughout Scripture. In Exodus chapter 1, verse 22, it says, "And Pharaoh charged all of his people, saying, Every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive." The situation there in the text is that a deliverer had been prophesied to come. And the priests and generals had told Pharaoh this, that out of the camps of Israel was going to come. Israel had been in 450 years of slavery, and that God was sending a deliverer. Pharaoh decided that he was going to annihilate that deliverer and kill off every child. I find it amazing that he wanted to not find the deliverer, but that he was going to kill every man-child. And the reason for that is that any one of those men had the possibility and the destiny to become a deliverer. When God's hand is on a man, he could take a man from obscurity and make him a deliverer, a leader. And so Pharaoh understood this, being prompted by a satanic agenda, spiritual warfare. Opening himself up to a demonic spirit, began to attack the man before he was developed, trying to kill off men as they were being born. And so as I dig into today's podcast, there's some information that I want to share with you about a demonic and spiritual battle and warfare that has been waging for thousands of years, but specifically in this nation, this attack has been waging for the last 60 years. And it is no longer being waged behind closed doors. I am shocked in my generation that this battle is wide open. It's on television. It is happening in the marketplace. It is happening in stores, name brand stores, from Target and all the way through to Starbucks. Every arena is waging battle, but no one's saying anything. There's not an awareness, an awakening that men of God need to be able to fight on the front lines of this spiritual battle, because it takes a spiritual man to fight a spiritual battle. The natural man is ill-equipped to deal with the circumstances that are happening today. The castration of manhood, the attack of masculinity. It takes a divine man, a biblical, purpose-driven man who's filled with the power of the Holy Spirit to do warfare against the adversary in the arena of stripping men from their masculinity. And so I want to deal with three particular powers, three particular movements and or ideologies that each one of them is possessed by spiritual influences and is on the attack against masculinity. The first one would be the pioneer of the feminist movement. Please listen to what I'm going to share with you. Kate Millett, the pioneer of the feminist movement, offered what was coined in those days. In 1969, it was coined a groundbreaking book titled Sexual Politics, 1969. She was the founder of the National Organization for Women, which was the pioneering organization for the feminist movement. And at a gathering that she had with the founders of that organization, of the feminist movement, she declared or penned out their manifesto. I want to give you what was stated at that meeting. So Kate Millett opened up the meeting with this declaration or this mission, this was the heart of the feminist movement. It was not, let me just preface this, it was not equal rights for women. You would think it would be. That at the heart of the feminist movement would be the desire and mission to have equality or equal rights for women. You would have thought it would have been the representation for women in all spheres of culture, from the marketplace to the corporate house to the boardroom. You would think that that would have been in it. Not even equity or salary equality. None of that is mentioned. Here's what she opened the meeting with. Here it is. Why are we here today? The response was to make revolution. What type of revolution? Cultural revolution was shouted by the group attending the meeting. How do we make cultural revolution? And then she begins to give the manifesto by destroying the American family. How do we destroy the American family? By destroying the American patriarch. Did you get that? You get cultural revolution. Cultural revolution can only happen when men are not in the role that the man is supposed to be in. So let me follow this. How do we make cultural revolution? By destroying the American family. The attack of the feminist movement was on the American family. How do you destroy the American family? By destroying the American patriarch. And how do you destroy the American patriarch? By taking away his power. And how do we do that? By destroying monogamy. How do we destroy monogamy? By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, by promoting prostitution, and by promoting homosexuality. They agreed that they would settle for nothing less than the utter destruction of Western society. The feminist movement, and at the heart of the feminist movement, is not equality and representation of the females within the country. It is for cultural revolution, and it is at the heart of removing the patriarch from the family. It is destroying what we would consider to be and know to be the nuclear family unit. This is a spirit. This is spiritual warfare. As you begin to wage warfare, for the Bible talks about God establishing the family and it resting on a patriarch that is to lead from generation to generation to generation. This is from the Old Testament all the way through to the New Testament. So that was the first attack. That is one of the powers. That's one of the spiritual forces. That is a area of spiritual warfare that the man is engaged in. The second was with the introduction of the term toxic masculinity, which was coined by two particular men, Shepard Bliss and Robert J. Stoller. They began to promote this toxic masculinity in articles and in books, and here is what they began to do. The toxic masculinity began to cloud out or blur the lines and the truth of true masculinity. And this is what was at the core. They didn't just use every bad male behavior as an indication of toxic masculinity. So they just didn't say, well, toxic masculinity is attached to a toxic behavior. No. They went against something deeper. Rather, they looked to mold men and to strip men of all attributes and characteristics that didn't meet their social reconstruction of the male. So at the heart of their introduction to the term of toxic masculinity was to strip or to redefine the man and masculinity to what they believed was social reconstruction of the man. And they peddled toxic masculinity was when the man operated in certain beliefs. Here were some of the certain beliefs. Listen, when the man was the head of his house, when the man was viewed as the patriarch of his house, they began to say that that's toxic because there's not equality in the house, so we were all made equal, and this type of hierarchy was toxic. Any level of expectation that his wife had that she was to be under authority in the house, under his protection, they coined as toxic. When a man was viewed as the breadwinner of the house, they said was toxic because the woman had every right to begin to have a career. And they coined that whenever a man had a belief or ideology that he was to be the breadwinner in his house, they said that was toxic masculinity. When the man was viewed as a defender of his house, the strength of the house, the defender of the house, they said that that type of masculinity was toxic masculinity. When the man was viewed as the builder of culture, they said that that was a view or version of toxic masculinity. They knew that true masculinity would fight back against the wayward, sinful culture, and that they could not reconstruct culture. They could not transition culture to the type of culture that they wanted to see, also in allegiance and working. So these are spiritual powers. This is an area of spiritual warfare. We already have the feminist movement now. We're moving to the 80s. And we have now toxic masculinity. This is another bullet in the chamber. This is another, you would say, switchblade that the enemy is using to castrate masculinity. Got to attack the house, got to attack the strong man, got to come against. I mean, even Jesus said that you can't spoil a house unless you first bind the strong man. The attack of the enemy has always been against the defender of the house. Get the man out of the way as the breadwinner. Get the man out of the way as the defender of the house, the guardian of the house, the father of the house, the patriarch of the house. And this is that part of that social reconstruction. I mean, we're knee deep in social reconstruction. It's happening before our eyes. Here's the problem. The seeds of what we're seeing today were sown 40, 30, 50 years ago. We're seeing now the fruition of it. We're seeing the maturity of this, and it's taking on momentum to a degree that this toxic, or you would say this attack on masculinity, this reconstruction of masculinity is being taught now in the earliest levels of education. Again, I reiterate, they knew that true masculinity, divine masculinity, would fight back against a wayward culture, that it would fight back against a sinful culture, a culture that preys on children, that leads girls into promiscuity. That true masculinity protects the house and says, hold on, not in this house, not in my house. I'm going to put you in check. You're not coming after my kids. You're not coming after my wife. You're not coming after my daughter. You're not coming after my son. They knew that, so they said that every time a man begins to respond and manifest his true masculinity, they would coin it as toxic masculinity. That a true masculine man needed to be in touch with his feminine nature. He needed to be passive. He needed to be tolerant. He needed to just allow culture to transition into whatever culture wanted to be. I challenge you to look at every aspect of our culture, from politics to local government to the marketplace to education, in every one of those arenas. Economics, every one of those arenas. Family, every one of those arenas, we need strong men. So let me give you a truth. The lack of divine masculinity on a culture creates toxins. So a house that doesn't have a solid man there is toxic. A culture that doesn't have a divine masculine man, a true masculine man, becomes toxic. A government that isn't surrounded and seats filled with true masculinity becomes toxic. It's where thievery takes place. It's where laws get passed that you ask yourself, how is this? Even somebody with no common sense knows that we shouldn't have laws in place that we are currently passing. That is the absence of true masculinity, defenders and protectors of the things that are righteous and right. That's toxic. The last spiritual battle, or the last, I would say, place that we see this false ideology or a false ideology impacting or concerning itself with masculinity has been the popularity of the term the alpha male. These terms for men were derived from the designation that the alpha and beta animal, the wolf animal, was a correlation to the alpha male. This was made particularly popular when it came to sales. You're talking about that alpha male personality. So that alpha male talked about mating privileges with females, the ability to hold and control territory. It was leading towards an animalistic style of hierarchy that the alpha male ate, or the alpha animal in a wolf pack ate first, that the entire pack of wolves was there to serve the alpha male. And again, that term has become synonymous in sales, that the alpha male is at the top of the food chain. He takes what he wants. He takes his relationships, that all relationships are subservient. It's a wolf pack mentality. I want to say to you that the alpha male characteristics have no part or similarities to true masculinity, and do not confuse the two. Alpha males are hunters. They're egotistical. They're boasters. They're domineering. They have abusive behaviors. Don't confuse this wolf pack alpha man with the masculine man, the man who is identified as that divine masculine man. I keep using the word divine because the creator of masculinity is God himself. A masculine man has his emotions in check. He is not taking his food first. He's making sure that everyone around him is being fed. He is self-sacrificing. He's sacrificing for the sake of others. He is serving others, not being served. And that's the characteristic of masculinity. You want a masculine man in charge of a team. You want the type of man who isn't driven by or driven in his emotions with some toxic emotions filled with boasting and ego and wanting others to serve him. You want a masculine man who's not a hunter but a keeper, who's a giver, not a taker. And it's important that as you listen to this podcast, I wanted to share this because this is what's waging right now. These ideologies, these concepts, this warfare has been going on, and it is really attacking the mentality and ideology of masculinity, and some men are hesitant to move and operate in their masculinity for fear of what others might see in them or view them. And I'm here to say you need to release those things, and you need to access something even deeper than masculinity, but true masculinity, which comes from our Creator. I ministered a message in the last Sunday in our congregation, speaking about that you are to test every spirit. I want to give you an excerpt from my notes from Sunday service because I think it fits what I'm saying today and would maybe bring some revelation to you when it comes to masculinity. If you have not watched or listened to this past Sunday's message, we'll see if we can get a link on the screen for you to go and watch that. But in it, I made the statement based on the text that when God created Adam, so when God fashioned man and created man, he breathed into him, in his soul, he breathed into him, which then he became a living spirit, spirit pneuma, soul pneuma. He gave him masculine energy, very, very important for that. He gave him a masculine spirit. He gave him the spirit of a father, that in his masculinity was fatherhood. He gave him a spirit of a warrior. He gave him a spirit of a defender, a spirit of a fixer. How do I know that? Because you see it in the instruction to Adam to take dominion, to take authority, to be a leader in the garden. So you could not require for Adam to be those things if you did not put in him the nature or ability to bring those things to pass. Why then did God have to separate from Adam, from the rib of Adam, a helpmeet, a female? Well, you might say that Adam could not possess two types of natures at the same time. So in order for Adam to have a helpmate, God had to create a woman, and God gave the woman feminine energy, or a spirit, an endowment of spiritual energy, so that she became the nurturer, she became the governess of the house. She then complemented Adam, because Adam had a masculine spirit, and in his masculine spirit, he was able to be the provider, she was able to be the nurturer, and he separated the two in order for those two things to complement each other, and that became very important. And so as we look at her being the nurturer, the feeder, the multiplier, the communicator, there was a magnetism created between the two. So the masculine spirit in Adam was drawn to the feminine spirit in woman, and the two created a magnetism between each other. And I have so much to say on this, but time's going to fail me to do this, and I just want to get through this particular podcast because I have another installment of this message on Sunday, and I would encourage you to view that, be a part of the congregation on Sunday. But this is deep stuff here, and I am talking to you about spiritual warfare. That's why in 1 John 4:1 it says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits, whether they are of God." This try the spirits, I'm not talking about trying demonic spirits. I'm talking about the spirit of a person. Try the person. So this masculine spirit, this divine endowment in the nature of Adam, when Adam sins, becomes flawed. This is why on our podcast and on our app and in our men's group and in a revelation God gave me, it was now the journey of a man to reclaim lost manhood. The parts of Adam that he lost when he sinned against God, the fracture that happened in his soul, in his spirit, that only through Christ and only through redemption can restoration begin to happen. Only through that can you begin to access that divine masculine nature that is going to bring about the restoration in you, that restoration of manhood and true masculinity. While we've been trying to access that and grow in our masculinity, the enemy has been attacking our culture because we have been fractured in the home. We're now the recipients of 50 years of fractured families, 50 years of ideologies and spiritual warfare being waged against the nuclear family, against the patriarch of the family, an education system that is creating chaos and causing young men to lead by feeling. We have a crisis of men's mental health happening around us, and we are desperate for what? Revival. That's what we should be desperate for. We are desperate for us as men to begin to, through the born-again experience, begin to see restoration when it comes to the place of masculinity and reclaiming our manhood. That's what this app is about. That's what our curriculum is about. It's about reclaiming manhood. That is what our training sessions are about, is reclaiming manhood. The stakes are high. The next generation is dependent. Every civilization is dependent on strong men. On strong men, civilizations go from success to success. On weak men, civilizations go from strength to failure. I want you to pass this podcast around. It's probably part one of a couple discussions that we need to have on manhood, but I would encourage you to promote this podcast, send it out to other men, and really begin to engage spiritual warfare and ask God as a man to begin to start the process for you to see the restoration of masculinity to the point of God's plan for you and God's divine nature fusing with your spirit and with your soul in order to bring about true masculinity. Till next week, may God richly bless you. Again, if you like these podcasts, Hit a like button if there's a like button there. But you know what? More than that, pass it on. If you don't like it, pass it on to other men. Say, I hate this guy. This guy's terrible. He stinks. Pass it on to someone else, because maybe someone else would like what you stink. What you think is crap, other people might consider to be gold. Either way, pass it on. And I will see you again next week. God bless. Hey guys, I want to take a minute and just thank you for watching today's podcast. We're in this thing together, so I want to encourage you to like the podcast and also share it with as many guys as you possibly can. We're living in dangerous times, so I encourage you, as we stick together and get the most valuable information for our own manhood and just our own stability and life, good things can happen with that. So till next week, may God richly bless you.